Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Alisa Slazinska, and I work for the City of Chicago Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, BACP. Welcome to the BACP Business Education Workshop Webinar Series. We have adapted our regular business education workshops at City Hall into these webinars until further notice. On behalf of our Commissioner, Rosa Escarino, I want to inform you that business licenses can be processed online where applicable by visiting chicagobusinessdirect.org. And any websites or emails that I mentioned, I will post in the chat box, so you'll be able to reference them there as well. And if you are part of the BACP Entrepreneur Certificate Program, you can get credit for joining this webinar by sending an email to bacpoutreach@cityofchicago.org. If you want to learn about the program, please visit chicago.gov/business-education. And to help guide your businesses and employees during Chicago's reopening process, including the updates to Phase 4 guidelines, please visit chicago.gov/reopening. Also, BACP and the City of Chicago's Office of Emergency Management and Communications created Shy Biz Emergency Alerts. You can opt in to receive targeted emergency alerts for the business community. If you are interested, please visit chicago.gov/shy-biz-alerts. And we encourage attendees to ask questions. Please use the chat box and send your questions to all panelists. There will be a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. And today's webinar will be Fighting Cybercrime and Meeting Your Cybersecurity Challenges, presented by the Better Business Bureau. To kick things off, we have Tom Johnson, Vice President of Public and Board Relations with the Chicago BBB. Welcome, Tom.
And it's really great to be with everybody today. We've got a really great schedule for you. This is part of Cybersecurity Awareness Month, which is October, and also, of course, our ongoing partnership with BACP, which we greatly, greatly value. And we really thank everyone for attending today. We want to let you know, Better Business Bureau is the cornerstones of our organization are to protect consumers and really help business owners out in any way that we possibly can. Cybersecurity is a big problem. And here to kick things off, I'd like to introduce our President and CEO, Steve Burness.
Well, thanks, Tom. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of the Better Business Bureau, I want to thank you for attending today's event, and we're greatly appreciative of the BACP and the partnership we have with the organization. As Tom mentioned, protecting consumers has been the hallmark of the Better Business Bureau for over 100 years. Helping consumers and businesses is truly a top priority for us. Today, we're very pleased to offer some of the great information and support for small businesses to protect themselves against the ever-changing threat of the cybersecurity attacks. Our BBB was the first to start offering these workshops over 3 years ago, and we have a great program for you with some true experts from Sagen as we observe the Cybersecurity Awareness Month, as Tom mentioned. So on behalf of the BBB, thank you for being here today as well. And if the BBB can help you in any way, please feel free to reach out to our organization. I'll turn it back over to Tom.
Thank you, Steve. And again, thanks to everyone for joining us. BBB did a big study on cybersecurity about 3 years ago, and what the statistics showed us is that small businesses, when they're hit by a cybersecurity attack, 50% of them can't survive for more than 3 months. Now, the SBA, the Small Business Administration, just did a new updated study this year, and they found that 60% of all small businesses hit by a cybersecurity attack couldn't last for 6 months. Those those are startling numbers. What's even more startling is the fact that small businesses make up the majority of the cyber attacks. That's who the cyber criminals come after. It's the big companies that make the big headlines, and small companies are being hit all the time as well, but they don't make the big headlines. And that's why we're so happy to do this today. And here to join us are just two great experts on cybersecurity and really know how to break things down for you. And we have some great tips for you today. You'll leave this seminar, you'll leave this webinar with some really great actionable items. So you'll know what to do. You'll have a good idea on things you can do to protect yourself. And Sagen provides 24/7 IT service to many Chicago area businesses, including large to small. They provide IT security, implementation of solutions, and also provide complete support to the BBB. They're an A+ rated accredited business of the BBB, and they are our cybersecurity and IT solutions team. In addition to IT, Sagen also provides business consulting, employee training, recruiting, and risk management. And I'd like to welcome Brandon and Rich from Sagen. Gentlemen, you want to do a quick hello?
Great. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. I'm Rich Stepniewski. I'm the CEO of Sagen. We're headquartered here in Chicago. And as Tom mentioned, we actually support clients on a nationwide basis and globally as well. With me, I have Brandon Patrick, who I'm going to turn it over to, who will actually walk you through some of our presentation here today. And then we're also available this whole time for questions if you may have them. So take it away, Brandon.
Sure. Thanks, Rich and Tom. Happy to be here today. Happy to share knowledge. And as we go through this, please feel free to ask questions along the way, too. A lot of this is just trying to cover a broad range of material in what is really a short amount of time. And some of you may have some very specific questions, which we're happy to get to. But I oversee our IT managed service practice, as it's called. And as Tom mentioned, that's the practice that provides IT support to small to medium-sized companies all over Chicago and various places across the U.S. And that's the practice that I oversee. So with that, Tom, I'm going to help guide through the presentation, and I'll take us to the next slide or two.
Yeah, I want to emphasize these are our contact numbers at the Better Business Bureau, so anyone is free to contact us about the Better Business Bureau, or we'll also have contact information, of course, for Sagen. This is Steve Burns, who just did our intro. He's our president and CEO. And again, I'm Tom Johnson, vice president of public and board relations. These are both of my numbers and my emails. We want to emphasize, and Brandon, let's go to the next slide, because most importantly, we have your contact information a little bit later on. So this is the contact information for both Rich and Brandon. If you have cybersecurity questions to follow up, any information you need, please contact them as well. I want to emphasize we really want to make this presentation interactive for you today. So we have the chat box open. We'll be going through slides, but as we go through them, I'll be asking Rich and Brandon, the true experts here today, about some of their thoughts on that. So if we could move forward. These are some of the facts that I told you about earlier. It's stunning that 50% of small business owners say they could only stay in business 3 months or less if they suffered a cybersecurity attack. Not only is some of that data information being stolen, ransomware, but also vendors and customers can lose faith in them as well. We are here today to help. So we want to emphasize that. We're going to leave you with some really good information and some actions that you can take. So if we can move to the next slide, please. Basically, BBB identified 5 steps to cybersecurity. This is a quick, very quick overview. Identify your assets. You can see the Start Here button. Identify your assets. What do you have in your business? Protect your assets. Detect incidents. Respond with a plan, and recover normal operations. And Rick and Brandon, I know that we could take a half hour with this topic alone, but do you want to just throw in some comments, real briefly about what each of these steps means?
Yeah, I would just add that at the identify your assets portion, you may want to just think about that across your organization, because that is actually something that's kind of evolving and becoming more important, I guess is maybe the right thing to say. But because everybody's assets are different. It could be physical assets, which are like the devices, computers, network devices, servers some of you may have, so very much IT equipment. But the other thing, too, is just information. Information these days is an asset. And that's what a lot of the new protections for compliances are geared towards. So if you have a means that you are capturing customer information, anything that identifies a person could be considered what's called personal identifiable information. So those types of things are also an asset. And as regulation is coming, those are the type of things that you'll need to think about. How do you make sure that it's protected? And how you protect it is a matter of where it is stored. There's a lot of software that's now being used that's called cloud, or what was historically called software as a service, where you use something like an online platform for processing customer payments, for purchase and sale of inventory and things like that. If it's sitting in a place like that, it's not necessarily in your environment, so you're somewhat protected. But for the things that are in your control, so computers that you might have in your business, or servers that run applications that are in somewhere, inside the walls, as we say, those are the things that you really need to make sure are protected, and that you're doing something to identify, when incidents, as we call them, those are security breaches, when those things occur, and how you can respond to it. Because as Tom mentioned on the prior slide, is that a lot of businesses really don't plan for or know how to react when some of that sensitive information has been stolen. And it's very reactionary and frantic in a lot of cases, right? Because it's almost like somebody broke into your home. They've stolen something that's of yours and is private and is sensitive. So it's always good to just make sure that you're also, it's just like a fire. You plan for what, if it does happen, okay, here's how we get out, so that, can't avoid it once it's happened, but let's, get out and get out safely. So, cybersecurity is the same thing. You want to make sure that you have a plan in place for if and when you should have some sort of incident. Tom, I believe you're on mute there. Sorry.
Okay, I just want to tell you a quick story. A very successful business owner that I know, he ended up getting cyber attacked, and he ended up learning how to use Bitcoin, and then he was told to drive out to a Bitcoin machine or a transaction outside of town to respond to this and pay for this cyber attack to get his information back. So yeah, it's really having a plan to respond to this is really important. So if we want to jump to the next slide, we can talk more about these things. Again, these are the 5 steps: identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. We can get into a lot more of these deeper in the weeds later on if we want to. If we can go to the next slide. So one of the big problems is everybody's working from home, right? Or a lot of people are. And business email compromise scams are one of the really big things hitting a lot of businesses. You get a message, you get a text message, you get a text message to your personal phone, or you get a email, and it looks exactly like it's coming from your boss, and it says anything from release personnel records to, hey, would you go out and buy some gift cards for everybody? These are tough COVID times. We want to inspire everybody. So you have to really be careful. And one of the best things to do with business email compromise scams is just really pick up the phone and call that person directly. You have to verify everything now. And Rich, Brandon, do you guys see this kind of stuff frequently?
Very much so. Yeah, it's been the theme of probably last year and this year when it comes to, cyber attacks. They've moved from just trying to put a piece of harmful software on your software known as malware, of which virus is what that is, to what's called social engineering. And business email compromise is one of those, where they try to send you a message that looks and feels very much like your boss, as you were mentioning, and say, wire me money or provide your credentials. And they try to take that information and then use it in some means against you. But it does go back to the prior slide. I mean, what they're looking for the most part is to try to steal your credentials. So if you click on a link in an email that takes you to a login page and you provide your email and password, They will then try to use that, go to the real version of that site, log in with your information, and see if there's anything sensitive there that they can steal. And that's pretty much how that works. It's not a piece of technology that drives that. That is a person gathering information from you. And I don't know the exact statistic anymore, but it's close to 50%, and that is what antivirus programs are successful at blocking. The other 50%, unfortunately, is just simply employee or user error. So that's why cyber attacks right now are so heavily geared towards people, because everybody's at home. Although everybody's guards are down, and they can, they've really ramped up the number of calls, texts, and emails that they're sending, much more so than years we've seen in the past. Rich and I were just talking about that yesterday, because I know he, being the CEO of our company, is getting hit with a lot of those as well.
And I just want to emphasize, people probably have seen in the news where entire cities, villages have been robbed of their personnel directors because it's so easy now to go online. It's called spear phishing. It's a little more hyper-focused than just phishing. But it's so easy to go online, get a directory of the company people and often their emails. And so it's so easy to go impersonate them. And we've seen, villages, cities literally lose all their personnel information because they thought their boss was requesting all their personnel information. So we've seen situations like that. And so I think this might be one inflection point where we can give everybody a great free piece of advice, is to make sure you talk to all your employees and ask them to verify any emails, any texts from the boss, anything that asks for any kind of records or information, certainly banking information, and contact them one-to-one directly. We used to say walk down the hallway, but now in the virtual world, is that some pretty solid free advice? Does Sagen, do you guys do that at Sagen?
Rich, I believe you're on mute.
Yeah, I would add that there's two aspects to protecting yourself. So there's a technical aspect. So of what Brandon mentioned, there's a lot of tools and techniques that you deploy digitally and technically to protect your assets. But then the other 50% really breaks down to human error. And either you yourself or your employees being susceptible to the human aspects of falling part of a trap or a scam or something to that effect. The greatest analogy I always like to use is everybody who may be watching this that has an elderly parent that lives at home. You could have the best security system for that parent of yours, but if they open the door and let the person in, there's nothing that's going to prevent that. And that's what you're seeing a lot today, is because of a lot of the techniques that are deployed online and the security methods that are employed technically in your computer system, whether it's antivirus, malware, and so forth, that organizations, criminal organizations or entities or people are resorting to more of the human aspects of going out and committing scams or crime or obtaining identifiable information about yourself that you willingly actually give up. And usually these are sometimes obtained via what we kind of call social engineering scams, where it's actually a phone call. Somebody and it usually centers, like this time of year is actually a really big time for this type of criminal activity to take place, because it typically centers around time of high activity or what I would call very passionate subjects. So we're in the middle of a presidential election. So regardless of what your political affiliation is, you may get a call of somebody, oh, I'd like to do a survey with you about Joe Biden, or I'd like to do a survey with you about President Trump. Regardless of how you feel, they'll start asking you some questions, and then you'll start volunteering some information. And if you notice that some of the information, like, for example, do you feel the economy is better or worse? And you'll say, oh, it's worse, or, oh, it's better. And they say, well, what was the last largest purchase that you made? Oh, I bought a car earlier this year. Oh, where did you buy that? And so forth and so forth. What make and model was that car? And so What they're doing is they're actually gathering information about you over the phone that is identifiable information at which that you would normally use in setting up the security to your passwords. So a lot of that information could be identified verbally over the phone, not in a technical nature at all.
Great insight. And let's move on to the next slide, Brandon. And, working from home is especially problemsome. You might not have the same firewalls at home that you do at work. You're getting emails, you're getting links, and they look legitimate, and be very wary of any urgent alerts that you get at home. It can be tough, and everybody's under extra pressure with COVID, and it's been a tough year, and it's been a challenging year for everyone. So just know when emotions are running high, when people are a little bit off their guard, it's just like what Rich was saying. It's so easy to jump on one of these. If we could go to the next slide.
I'll just point out one quick thing there, Tom. Just one of the things that we're seeing, though, when it comes to everybody working from home is there's a small break in what I think is the norm for everybody. So in years past, you would go to work, you'd get to work, turn on your computer, do the workday, leave, turn off your computer. That process of turning on and on your computer is actually a prompt for it to search for and find any recent updates, for example, like to Windows and things like that. When people are at home, what we're seeing is the computer's left on, kind of like a personal laptop might be, and then whenever you're done, they just walk away and let it go to sleep. Well, the problem with that is that routine of starting and stopping, your computer and turning it on and off, a lot of computers are not getting those updates. So it's a small thing to do, but it actually makes a pretty big impact. So we would highly encourage everyone to make sure that you're restarting your computer every day while you're working from home.
Great piece of advice. We talked about malware. There's a whole bunch of different themes. I think at last count, I do the media relations for BVB, and I think we had sent out 27 press releases since the outbreak of COVID. People and businesses are getting messages. We've got PPE equipment for your business, and we've got all these different assets, and people are getting these kind of personal messages as well. So when you get any type of link, when you get any type of contact, don't click on this unless you know who this is coming from specifically. Just delete it, because it can lead to viruses, it can lead to stolen information. So as we move along, government relief checks, both for businesses and individuals, has been huge. We've gotten so many calls from business owners who say, hey, listen, we got this call from this trusted association, and they said we're qualified for stimulus money, or there's a government grant for businesses. And there are a lot of government grants for businesses, which has really made it confusing. BBB has teamed up with the Small Business Administration, BACP, and we've been on talking about some of these great programs that the city does have, that the federal government, the SBA, does have to help small businesses from government relief, but you're getting a whole lot of fake messages. So always check it out directly with that agency. And I don't know if you guys have anything to add about that. This is just some of the things that we're really seeing.
It's just another variety, right, of the different types of ways that they're trying to use these messages to get you to do something and give away your information. In the prior slide, we had talked about malware. It's really important, as always, to have antivirus on your computer. In light of the pandemic, Microsoft, as an example, has been pushing out free updates and things like that. So it doesn't necessarily always need to be something you have to buy. It might already be on your computer. If you have a Windows device, just click the Start menu and look for Windows Defender, and that should be running, and that should be up to date. But yeah, otherwise, it's the typical, just make sure your antivirus software is up to date and running on your computers.
And a lot of people are also, and businesses are getting these checks in the mail, government stimulus money, and they go down and cash them, and they'll get a call from the people who sent them to them because they're fake, and they'll say, hey, we overpaid you by $1,000. Your check for $8,000 send us back 1,000 or 2,000 or whatever it is. Or they'll have a program where they tell you that you have to pay an application fee, but you've got $5,000 coming. So you pay this simple $500 fee. But of course, these are just some of the scams that we see going on right now. And something you need to know, if you are a business and you get one of these checks or someone contacts you, and in this image, this check for $3,344, so you put this into the bank, and banks, by law, have to make those funds available within 3 business days. But it can take up to 3 to 4 weeks to detect a phony check. So you could put this check into your account, your business account or your personal account. It will cash, and then it will show clear at the bank. And then 3 weeks later, it'll get kicked out as a phony check. So just know that that's a lot of people don't know that. And once they see the check cleared, they're all in, and they believe that they have this money in their account. We can go to the next slide. Phony text scams. This is one of the big things that we're seeing. We used to have phone scams only, then it turned into internet, then it turned into email, and it's just morphed onto text scams. Everything from COVID to business relief, and just know that unless you know who this came from, just simply don't click on the link. So you got to be protective with your phones as well. Rich, Brandon, anything to say regarding that? We can move on to the next slide if not.
Yeah, no, it's just that I always kind of make the joke that your bank is never going to text you for information, so don't click on anything in a text message.
Isn't that true? Yeah, that's so true. Fraudulent health products. Go ahead, Rich. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, not only is your bank not going to text you, I used to say your bank would never email you, but since COVID, and a lot of small businesses, depending on who they bank with, a lot of the PPP programs that were out there, that the correspondence is only taking place via email. What I would suggest, though, is that when responding to emails, or that go directly to the bank's website. Typically, don't go through any links, just because if it's a fraudulent email or that. If you ever get prompted by something that does look legitimate, whether it's your bank, whether it might be Microsoft, and they said, oh, you need to change your password, and even though as good as it may look, put in a fake password at the start, because they'll ask you, say, put in your current password, and you put in your current password, and you put in some new one, and in reality, all they were doing is capturing your existing one. So what I would say is, if you doubt it, and even if skeptical any bit, put in a fake password at first. If nothing happens and you continue on to the site wherever you're going, then it was never a legitimate. It was never a legitimate site to begin with. It was just trying to capture your information. If it was, and you put in the wrong password and it bounces back, that means it was authenticating against an original list. So it was, and then you could go ahead and move forward and put in your phone.
And something, we don't have a slide for this, and something extra I just want to throw in there. We get a lot of calls from businesses who get threatening calls from utility companies saying, we're going to shut down your electricity unless you pay right now. And those are horrible. And we've seen businesses who are struggling send money in, and then they find out it went to the scammers and actually not to the utility companies. So be very wary of any calls, because ComEd does not do that. As our CEO, Steve Burness, likes to say, the only thing you should do in 30 seconds or less, or 30 minutes or less, is order a pizza. But one of the things that they always do, they put pressure because they want money, and they put urgency because they want the money now. So you don't have time to really think this through, and you think, oh my God, my utilities are going to be shut down. This happened at a restaurant that we dealt with. They called them at 11 o'clock and said, we're shutting down your power unless you bank wires money right now. And they legitimately owed some money to the utility company. So they sent the bank wire out, and it, went to the wrong people. So I just wanted to throw that in there anecdotally. So don't forget, anybody can look so authentic in this day and age. It doesn't take much to mock up a fake website. They impersonate everybody. They impersonate others to be working with you, customers. the World Health Organization, the CDC. It's so easy to put up a fake website and then vanish. If we want to jump to the next slide.
Well, I just going to point out one really quick thing. So something to be aware of is that, there is no laws and regulation around the creation of websites. So anybody can do that. Same thing goes for ads, and it seems innocent most of the time when you see ads on Google or on Facebook. But once again, anybody can place those ads. And this being an election year, one of the things that we're seeing a lot is there's a lot of fake election websites that are being advertised to people so that when you search for something on Google, those appear in those ads. You click on them, it looks and feels like a website, and then they do something to gather information. It's just something to be aware of that usually those will look illegitimate in some way, like what's called the URL or the web address at the top might say something that just doesn't look normal. What that is exactly, it's hard to say, but, I guess I would say for the next month as you're navigating the internet, if you do happen to click on an ad, if something looks of interest, just hover your mouse over and make sure it's the proper place. If it's a government website, it'll be like BBB where it's, .org or .gov, and it won't have, decimals in the weird places or things like that. But anyway, just be aware of this taking place now.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Brandon, because one of the things we like to emphasize, too, scammers buy internet ads just like everybody else. In fact, they buy a lot of ads, and be really careful. And always check out companies with bbb.org and really be careful before you do business with anybody that you know that you don't know. So moving along to the next one, we talked about this. There's phone calls, there's these phishing emails, government stimulus. They ask for your credit card numbers, your routing numbers. They're after all kinds of information. And as Rich was saying, they're just trying to piece together a picture. And the more information they have about you, the more information they have about your business, the stronger they become. If we can jump on to phony business loans and grant scams, we talked about this. This is huge right now in this day of stimulus, day and age of stimulus. We're seeing it all over. Some wonderful programs, city, federal, state, are really trying to help out small business owners, and then you have people taking advantage of that. One of the things that people don't realize is scammers probably follow the news as well as anybody. They read the headlines. They see what's going on, and you can guarantee yourself the moment that the government, when they pass another stimulus bill, they're going to be out there working it and say, hey, we've got this great program. As you know, stimulus bills just got passed. So you've got to be really careful, extra careful out there. We would like anybody who encounters any kind of scam, even if you just detect it, and you hopefully don't lose money, please report this to the BBB Scam Tracker. That's bbb.org Scam Tracker, or just, Google Scam Tracker. And this really helps us track these problems and get it out to the media and work with all of our partner agencies. It's really important. BBB is very active in the media. We work with a lot of different groups, from the FTC to the FBI to all our sister agencies in government, and we really work together to make sure that this information gets radiated out as fast as possible so we can protect other companies. If we want to jump on. These are some of our resources and links, and that you and again, we're happy to send these out to you. And any businesses have questions, we'd like to get into that right now, I guess. And one of the things, again, Rich and Brandon are the true experts. Can you guys tell us about some of the major things you're seeing for businesses and just some ideas of how to really protect yourself?
Yeah, I don't know that I have anything new necessarily than what we already covered. It's just that with people home, the attacks are not so much at a company's network. They're really trying to target the individual. And there's a number of, to kind of bring it full circle, if you will, why some of the stuff that we covered in pieces throughout this matter is that if I go back to the example that Rich gave with the caller that's trying to get information about your car, that might sound silly, but in fact, it's actually really a great example because one of the, if you signed up for an online service, a lot of times they'll ask you for security questions so they can verify that it's you when you log in if they don't recognize the device that you're logging into. And one of the common questions is, guess what? What make and model of your car? Or, your mother's maiden name, those type of things. So that is information that they can use to then get into your accounts. But the number one thing by far that people can do, besides simply just having antivirus on your computer, is making sure that for all your online service, you have what's called multi-factor authentication enabled. It's a fancy term that most of you probably already have set up and you don't really know it. If you bank online, you certainly have it enabled there. And what that is simply that when you go to a website, we'll use Chase because they're a big bank in Chicago. You log in with your username and password. That is what would be called one factor. The second factor is it sends you a text message on your phone that has a 5-digit code and says, please enter this to verify that that's you. So you do. That process is what we call two-factor authentication. One factor is your username and password. The other factor is the text message that comes through your phone. So you can do that now. It's offered on pretty much every online service you can think of, from email to banks. Make sure that you have that enabled, and that protects you against most of everything that we just discussed because, even if they're able to get all of your information, you provide your username and password, they still don't have your cell phone, so they can't impersonate that. So it's very important, and it's like the number one thing that we recommend for all of our clients right now to protect. And for owners and managers out there, that's the best thing that you can do to also sort of protect against the employees that are a little bit more susceptible to those kind of things. That gives you the peace of mind of knowing that they are protected and they're not going to make a mistake.
And you hit on something really important, right, is really toughen up your passwords. Because we just hear these stories all the time about how scammers can take a simple piece of information and figure out like 50% of the people's passwords that they've stolen information from by using birthdays, mother's name, favorite band names, all that kind of stuff.
Well, I would add to that too. If you asked us that question, let's say 5 years ago, the standard answer there would be if you are a business or a company and you want to deploy password policies, meaning that having your employees change their password every 60 days, well, 5 years ago, that probably would have been the best practice. Today, the best practice actually is, based upon research that has been conducted, is that to not force employees to change their passwords every 60 days. The reason being is because they typically always pick easy passwords that are easily changed, and so forth. So actually the best practice is not to change them that frequently, but to have a very long and complex password that can't easily be deciphered. So, which, to add to some of the comments that Brandon made, of what some of the common things that we're seeing is that most scams nowadays are based upon emotion, and that emotion will vary depending on what's going on in the time of year. So naturally, a lot of scams earlier this year were all centered around PPP programs and funding and things of that nature. Later in the year, let's say we got into quarantine and being in March and May, a lot of things centered around COVID. Now you're seeing a lot of scams centered around presidential elections. And as we go into Black Friday and the Christmas season, a lot more scams are going to be centered around spend this money here, you got free extra money if you spend your money here on this website or so forth. Because if you thought people spent a lot online last year, I guarantee you they're predicting it's going to more than double this year for the Christmas season as people are at home. And so the susceptibility to scams and everything are going to be a lot higher this year as we move into Cyber Tuesday or Cyber Monday, I should say. and Black Friday and even given Tuesday. So on the Tuesday after Thanksgiving, when you have a lot of nonprofits of asking for donations and making sure that you're actually giving legitimate donations. All of that, and really what's happening is you're thinking you're doing a good thing, giving to a nonprofit and organization. Yeah, you may be donating at $25, but you're also then giving away all your credit card information too at the same time. So one of the other points of advice I would recommend from a consumer perspective is when you do shop online, they use only the same credit card every single time. So you limit that amount of risk that you're susceptible to. From a business perspective, there's two other common business scams that we're seeing that are happening fairly recently. One of them, a lot of people use the example of the person who had to go get Bitcoin. Most likely, they probably fell susceptible to a ransomware attack, and it locked up their computer. So one of the things that you can actually easily do for that is, well, if you're an individual that operates, let's say, out of your home or that, make sure that your computer is actually backed up on a regular basis, synced up off-site, either to the cloud or that, so you have an actual backup of your information. Or if you're a business and you have multiple users, you want to make sure, again, you have a policy and a practice in place of backing up all of the computers and everything else. So what would happen here in these particular cases, if somebody did get affected by a ransomware attack that locked up their computer, the traditional fix there is typically wipe the computer, everything off, but you have a backup copy and you go back to where you started prior to the attack, and you have so you should never, ever pay a ransom. That's not a very good practice to do that. Lastly, the other business scam that we're seeing, and it actually, I would say we didn't fall victim to it, but our firm did have this occur, whereas the unemployment scams. There's a lot of unemployment scams that are happening. And our Chicago office received an unemployment claim for actually one of our employees. And our HR department received a letter from the Illinois Department of Unemployment and said, oh, this person's filing a claim for unemployment. And, well, they're sitting right here in our office. They're not employed. Well, what happened is when we talked to that employee, they were actually in the process of moving and refinancing their house or applying for a new mortgage. And it was actually that mortgage company. They had every bit and piece of their information of where they were employed, their Social Security number and everything. And basically somebody got that information and filed a fraudulent unemployment claim. Now, Illinois Department of Unemployment right now it has its challenges. And so whether they paid that claim or not, I think we were able to intercept it in time, so it didn't go against us. But ultimately, if employers are not paying attention to some of these notices that are coming in from the Department of Unemployment, well, they could be paying, the state could be paying out fraudulent claims. And that actually goes against that employer's employment rate at which they're paying.
Great information. And we see that all the time. It's probably one of the top complaints that we've seen are either fake employment claims, where they're offering businesses or individuals the opportunity to earn more money or get free equipment for their business, or unemployment scams. So it's really pervasive right now. So the best thing people can do is just really be on guard, know that this is happening out there, and you guys have given some great information. Anything else you'd like to add about just, some real basic stuff like companies come to you and how can you help them? Because they say, okay, Rich, okay, Brandon, we've really got to get this cybersecurity plan put together. We're a relatively small company. We've only got 10 employees. How can you guys help them?
Well, this is where we start, is that, what keeps us up at night is our client security. Because, the management of the day-to-day break-fix stuff happens, and most people understand that. It's just the scariness, I guess, that comes around security. So, that is where we start. We try to just look at, what is their exposure to risk, what kind of protections are already in place, and what can we do to harden that to minimize risk as much as possible. Then actually we do this exact sort of presentation to the whole company where it's an employee training session. And then we bake that into what we call onboarding, which is whenever somebody gets hired into the company, we try to make sure that we are present for some form of an in-person interaction to explain not only how to use your computer as you get it, but how to make sure that you use it in a very safe and secure manner and know how to use all the different security mechanisms, that are in place on that computer. And we do that for all of our clients because it's just kind of a standard thing that needs to be done. But yeah, the things that we really try to just look out for are all the things that we described today, and making sure that computers are all running antivirus and they're up to date, being restarted. Something that I do try to avoid tech talk, sorry everyone, on these kind of things, but there's a thing called group policy that we can implement that will help sort of enable ongoing policies for the company. So as Rich mentioned, like the password, making sure that computers are triggered to restart on at least a weekly basis. So if people forget, it just happens anyway. There's things that we can do as administrators to make sure that we're enforcing some of the policies that the company wants to put in place. Now, granted, we aren't completely stringent on everything. There are some things that are also just sort of suggested that we can do, but there's, with whatever kind of computer you're using or email system, those are the two main places, as well as your on-premise network, so the different network components you use to connect to the internet. Those are the places where we start. And then lastly, it's not necessarily part of this, but we want to make sure that everyone's data is protected and backed up, kind of like Richard said when it comes to things like ransomware. Rather than paying the Bitcoin, the only way to sort of get around that is if you have a backup of a file that gets hit with ransomware, you just simply replace it with the backup. That's the best way to get back up on your feet running as fast as possible. So that's the other thing we want to do too, is make sure that everyone's data is protected, because now I'll go full circle here, Tom. Going back to the very beginning, is that when people lose their data or lose access to their data, that's what they use to run their business. So imagine if you just lost access to all of your customers' information and you had no means of getting it back. How do you contact them for specials, appointments, things like that? So that's why it's so valuable, and why you really want to make sure that you're protected.
I think that's the best advice by far. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. Do we want to take some questions? I see some questions rolling in here.
Yes. Hey, so Lisa from BACP, questions did in fact come in. First question is, would you consider phone calls a part of cybersecurity?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the only way, the only way to actually screen those or weed those out, if you will, is going to go down to solid employee training methods.
Great. And there's actually a similar question, or on the same topic. The person wrote, I just opened a trucking company. I use my mobile phone number to conduct business calls. Now I receive so many scam calls. Any recommendations how I can minimize the volume of scam calls I get?
Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead, Brandon. I know where you're going to go with this.
Yeah, I was just talking to Rich about this yesterday. He's getting a bunch of these. It's a painstaking process, unfortunately, but all cell phones do have the same capability. It's just, I wish it was more present, and I wish there was a way that I could show you this, so I could just hold up my phone and show you, because I get them too. So what you'll want to do is on your phone, you'll want to go to, let's say, your missed calls or your recent calls section. Click on that number, and it should expand into a window that shows you more about that call, like, when it came in, and there should be some options to add it to a contact, create a contact, all that kind of stuff. And with most phones, unfortunately, you do have to scroll, but you scroll to the bottom, and there should be a link or a button or something that shows you block this caller. So you have to click that. And yeah, it's a painstaking process, but as you do that over time, it'll start to filter all those calls out. And different phones have different options too. You can block it outright, where it'll appear to them as if your phone number is disconnected. They just get one of those busy signals. other phones, not the iPhone, but like Android phones, I believe also give you an option to just send them to voicemail so that, perhaps, if it becomes legitimate later, you still can check the voicemails and call somebody back if it is legitimate.
And one of the problems is the government, the FTC and other government agencies did a really great job at hammering down and putting new robocall limitations on, which dramatically decreased the robocalls. But what we like to remind people is scammers don't pay attention to the law. So that opened up the freeway a little bit to them. So those kind of calls, there's no way to stop them because these guys do not care about the law. They're trying to steal information and money from people. So, great advice.
Yeah, Tom, I just had to try to reach one quick thing. It's kind of a newer service that we've seen. I have to admit, this is me just speaking to personal experience. I'm a Verizon customer. They did roll out this new call filter service that you can pay a little extra for. So cell phone companies are starting to do that now too. So for the person who asked the question, I would say try to maybe stop by one of the stores or call in to your phone vendor. They probably have one of those services now. If Verizon's doing it, that means everybody's doing it.
Yeah. The other in regards to phone systems for business, what I would highly recommend is we do this for a lot of our clients. So we have companies that could be as small as one or two owners in a business office environment or working from home, to all the way as big as large as some companies that have 500 employees. And a couple of solutions that are out there are what we call cloud-based phone systems. Or one brand name would be a product called DialPad. In fact, we use that for our own company right here, and some of our clients are on it. What DialPad is a phone system that is actually cloud. It doesn't have equipment in your office or anything like that, and it actually literally operates over the internet. So when you call my phone number, my office line, it will ring on my iPhone and it will ring on my computer. It's a separate number altogether than my cell phone. So and it's also an app on my phone. It's also on my computer. So if I'm at home, I want to call Tom, and I want Tom to think that I'm in the office, I'll call him through the app, and he'll see my number pop up as in the office. Now, what this does is it separates your personal phone from your work phone number. And this is also great because you could phone trees. You could have an answering system in there as far as, like, you want this call to go to accounting. You could route it to one person. You want this call to sales. You could route it to 5 other people, and so forth. So that system is actually very, very inexpensive and ranges from $15 to like $30 a month per user. And that's really the way to go for a lot of companies that are growing fast or potentially might have to scale down and shrink, because then your phone system can expand when you expand, or it could shrink when you shrink. And then the other aspect behind it is that the salespeople out in the field, they could have their own number, not their personal cell phone number. And if it's straight from the company, then you just turn off the app from them, and that number is then turned off.
Great, thank you guys. Question came in: would you consider seniors more vulnerable to cybersecurity attacks?
That's who they target in a lot of cases. And I don't know if I would say that they're more vulnerable. I guess in the way that, yes, they might be, just because they're not aware that something is illegitimate. You know, if you're not involved in work on a daily basis, you know, somebody that's retired won't be up to speed on the latest and greatest cybersecurity. So from that aspect, perhaps, no different than mail scams or, you know, phone calls, that kind of stuff. But yes, I guess the answer would be yes.
So to answer that, So to add to that just a little bit, BBB has done some studies, and it's shocking. In the last couple of years, seniors, while they will lose more money, because if they fall for a scam, it's usually something more related to investment or that type of thing. Actually, we're seeing this really changed in the cyberspace with the internet and email and texting. The 18 to 24-year-old segment, the millennials, are the number one cybercrime victim, and the next group up is 25 to 34. So this is really changing a lot. Although what Brandon said is certainly yes, they are more susceptible. We also have two just sets of generations out there that were born and raised with computers, and for the longest time, and with the convenience and the earlier trust, with all of these scams popping up and all of these fake websites, it's actually younger demographics that are really getting hit hard now too.
Yeah. Our experience has been, I would break them up into different categories. Tom, you're absolutely correct that a generation of 35-year-olds and younger are probably hit more frequently, being crimes, because they spend the most amount of time online, and they are the most mobile and most tech savvy. However, they probably have the least amount to lose. I know when I was that age, I had more debt than I had assets. So I had the least amount to lose. So yes, are they most susceptible? The people that have the greatest amount to lose would be those of, typically what we're seeing is anywhere from 38 to 65, because they amassed a certain amount of wealth and assets and things of that nature. So they would be at the most risk to lose. The third category would be senior citizens, and typically senior citizens are not that technical, so they spend less time online, and a lot of scams are a little bit more traditional, where they're actually physical, mail, or phone-based, and a majority of them are always going to be based upon what we call highly emotional issues. So when you get into the category of retirement and senior citizens, they will always typically speak scams related to like Medicare, Social Security, something around of that nature that they're highly emotional about, and they're most apt to react or do something.
And that's so true. We hear all the time that that age group is more hit with, hey, someone has hacked your cyber or your Social Security account, or hey, there's a problem with your Medicare, or this is Medicare calling. We need to confirm this information. And so yeah, it's really these scammers have become really more focused on the age groups and the people that they're going after. So it does have that variety. And tech scams are the younger generations are far more vulnerable to that, because they were learned, they at one time trusted everything that came in, and they trusted the internet, and times have certainly changed in the last few years.
Thank you. Someone asked, let's see. What are the top 2 to 3 antivirus softwares you can recommend, or make any recommendations? And I guess the follow-up would be, what should people look for in hiring maybe a cybersecurity company to oversee their cybersecurity at their business?
Brandon, you want to?
I couldn't quite hear the question. I apologize. What
Sure.
was that again?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me repeat it. So someone asked, what are the top 2 to 3 softwares you can recommend, or can you make any recommendations? And then a follow-up would be what to look for when hiring a cybersecurity team for your business.
Yep, sorry. I was actually even responding to that. So for all those, if you don't mind taking a look at the chat window, I believe I sent it to everybody. I would say there's 3 that I would recommend. The first one is called Malwarebytes, and that's why I sent it to everybody in the chat window, because it's kind of a long URL to send everybody to. That is one that does a lot of cybersecurity protection for both Macs and PCs. Same thing goes for the second one, ESET, just E-S-E-T, sorry. I sent the link for that one as well, too. Again, also good for PCs or Mac computers. And those are ones that, to be honest, are not that different from if you have like Norton Antivirus or McAfee or some of those others that you commonly see, installed on a computer when you buy it from Best Buy. There's nothing wrong with those. It's just I find those to be very salesy. They're always prompting you for the next portion of their product they want you to buy, so you have to buy into that. This Malwarebytes and then the ESET have both home version and business versions that we recommend to our clients. That's what we use. And I highly recommend, looking into those ones as well, too. They're the same price point. So they're, the only difference between Norton or McAfee is just that salesy portion of it. The other thing that I would also encourage everybody to do, if you have a PC and you have at least Windows 10, they've recently renamed it. It used to be called Windows Defender, and now it's called Windows Security. If you click on your start bar and just, search for the application, Microsoft has now just been including their free version of it, and it's actually pretty great. It's, especially with everything happening through the pandemic, Microsoft has been adding more and more security features to it. So it's very comparable for the other two that I just mentioned. So if you already have Windows 10, it's already on your computer. You just need to turn it on and make sure it's running and up to date. And of course, that's in a way free because you've already got it. But yeah, all three of those are the ones that we recommend for our clients, kind of just pending the situation, but they're all pretty good.
Can you guys talk a little bit, just briefly, about a lot of people are hearing advice come in about make sure you have your modem, your routers, your wireless extenders all secure. Can you talk about that? Because a lot of people hear that, but they're really not sure, what does this mean and what do I do?
Most people at home won't be able to do anything, and that is because there's two types of network devices in the world. It's called what's managed or unmanaged. Unmanaged is what most people have at home. You have a router or wireless access point. For those of you with maybe more of a smart home, you might have a modem and switches. And if you're buying them from places like Best Buy, online, Amazon, etc., and you just turn them on and they work and you don't really do anything with them, those are just providing access to internet for your various devices at home. Those, unfortunately, there's really nothing to do. And I don't mean that necessarily in a bad way. It just means that there aren't protections, on that device for your home use. In an office setting is where you would hear of managed devices. So you have things like a firewall or managed switches or managed wireless access points. And all of those are, things that an IT administrator like myself, you have a username and password, you can log into it, and then you can change how that device performs, where it allows traffic to where and to from, and who can access it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's where basically you manage all the traffic and security for your company, like within the physical side of your office. That's where, some of you maybe use like a VPN. It's called Virtual Private Network. If you're using those, that's where that software lives. It usually runs on a firewall. So if you're outside of your office connecting to the office, that's a secure way to connect to the firewall and then just sort of lives inside your company's, what we call on-premise, but you're accessing things that are there on site, like an application that runs on a server. It's really hard to delineate between home and business when it comes to some of those recommendations. I think when they come out, usually people that write those kind of deliver those as a blanket statement, make sure your firewall is up to date. Well, shoot, what do you do if you don't have a firewall? Do I need a firewall? Oh my God, am I protected? It's one of those things where at home, most people don't have that stuff, and I don't know that you need to unless there's it goes back again, full circle here again, to the very beginning. If you have sensitive assets or information at home, then it might make sense to get some of those managed devices so that you can manage security on your home network. Otherwise, it's more just, everyday use is fine just buying the unmanaged devices.
And Brandon, if you want to slide back to our contact information at the beginning of the presentation, one other quick question that I have is basically the one person that called in and said they had a trucking business and they use their mobile phone, and a lot of people are inside and outside of wireless all the time, right? Can you talk a little about, if you're doing work, if you take your laptop, if you go into different wireless zones, how challenging is that security-wise? What do people need to know? Like if I go up to Starbucks patio, or if I go up to a local patio here and I'm working outside and I'm on their wireless, tell us about the vulnerability of wireless zones, or what you think about that.
Yeah, you really need to just ask if you can trust the organization. I mean, you can watch on a network, for example. And I'm maybe glad that we just touched on the idea of managed devices, because in a place like Starbucks, they definitely have those. So they're looking at the traffic. Technically, to steal your information, username and password, that would be illegal, but they can at least watch your traffic, see where you're going, that kind of stuff. Basic information about your computer. It won't actually be stealing any personal identifiable information. That said, other people that are there in Starbucks with you, for example, might be, a hacker. And whenever you connect to the network, you're now on that network. You're connected to Wi-Fi. There are ways that they could perhaps break into your computer while you're there. I mean, you'll know it because something will start happening on your computer that was unexpected. But I guess that's one of the things I would just kind of caution, is that if you're in one of those settings, it's okay to check your email and things like that. But just make sure that you're not reading any kind of emails that are sensitive of nature. Sometimes the hacker isn't even on your computer. They're looking over your shoulder, kind of trying to get some of your, if it was Rich, for example, they're going to look to see if in his email signature, if he writes one, is it going to show his phone number, his email address, and his title? Oh my God, that's a CEO. Let's try to impersonate him. So they create an email address that's rich.subnewski@Sagen LLC versus this R.Subnewski, right? So it looks very similar. Or they might do, Sagen.llc.com. They make it look very similar. And the other thing, I guess, when you're in those kind of settings is just making sure that I wouldn't access like banking sites and things like that. It's not to say that it's unsafe. It's just that I wouldn't trust it. It's just, that's where you're getting a little bit too close to your financial success of your business. I just wouldn't do that. But for the most part, it should be okay to, do work in those kind of settings. You just really want to be a little bit extra cautious of what you're accessing and who might be around you.
Great.
Thank you.
I think people do a bad impersonation of me anyway, so.
Another question came in. Through my training at work, we learned that it is best to use our hotspots when we're in hotels or a Starbucks. Your thoughts?
Kind of to the same point, if a hacker breaks, let's say you're in a hotel or you're in that Starbucks, and if a hacker breaks into their network because that hotel or that Starbucks had vulnerabilities in their network, they can then be on that network and, manage it. So then if you connect innocently and, start to do work in general, there are ways that they could then gain access to your computer and the information that's on it. So if you wanted to be overly secure, you could use a hotspot. When you do that, you're avoiding that sort of scenario. So hotels, I would say it's a much lower risk because they usually have a lot of security measures in place, but it certainly is possible.
Great. Thank you, guys. And again, you can contact Sagen if anybody has any last-minute questions. Send them in. And if you want to go back a slide or two, Brandon, if anybody wants to contact the Better Business Bureau, you can contact me directly. And now that everybody has all of our information, we'll be watching out for imposter scams, I guess. But seriously, feel free to contact us. always recommend that you check everything out with BBB before you do business with people. And obviously, Sagen is an A-plus rated accredited business, and it's really important to seek out trusted businesses. And I think with that, unless you have any parting comments, I think we may wrap it up for today.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And I posted in the chat that this webinar is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Chicago BACP.
I just wanted to say a very special thank you to BACP for having us today. That's fabulous. We really appreciate it. It's Cybersecurity Awareness Month, October, so we thought this was a great fitting webinar. And our friends at Business Affairs and Consumer Protections, we can't thank you enough for holding these informative webinars. It's really important to be able to talk to business owners and reach out. So a special thanks to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We enjoyed the partnership. And with that, thank you, everyone, for joining us, and have a good rest of your evening.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.